All right, welcome back. We've talked about this a lot on the show, but we as a country and as a people have paid a very high price for China's lies about this pandemic. And should incidents like this be a wake-up call to future deliberate bio threats? Joining us now is a retired CIA officer and the senior editor at And magazine. He's contributing author to a book called Defending Against Bio Threats: What We Can Learn from the Coronavirus Pandemic to Enhance U.S. Defenses Against Pandemic and Biological Weapons. Sam Faddis, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Happy to be here, Sean.
All right, so tell me, first of all, that's probably the longest title of a book that I've ever read. So congratulations on getting that all on one cover. But why this book? Why now?
Well, look, we're going through, obviously, this pandemic, whatever you think about the nature of the threat, making a massive impact on the country. And bio threats are real, both from state actors and terrorists. And we ought to be looking very, very hard at our response, our ability to predict this, learning those lessons. So regardless of what the point of origin of this is, if we are hit with a deliberate attack in the future, we'll be better prepared.
And you talked about the future. So just in the past few days, we've heard news stories across the country of people having seeds show up in packages at their doorsteps from China. There's no invoice, nothing like that. I know the feds are looking into it, but is this something we're going to see more often? Do you think this is nefarious? Is this real, or is it just a coincidence?
Well, I don't know what the answer is as to where the seeds are coming from, obviously. I suspect it's not really nefarious. I suspect it's not really a biological attack. But on the other hand, I think you can look at this as a question of what if it was? What measures are there in place that would stop somebody from simply doing this with a nefarious intent? The answer, obviously, since it's happening, is none. There are no such measures. You can literally mail something into the United States and have it opened all over the country. So we probably ought to change that real quickly.
Well, I was going to say, Sam, doesn't this expose a massive weakness in our system?
Yeah, I mean, look, everything about what has happened here exposes a whole series of weaknesses, starting with this. We're still fumbling around in the dark trying to figure out exactly where this thing came from. I mean, I think everybody's in agreement it came out of a lab in Wuhan. But how? Was it deliberate? Probably not, but we don't know. Well, look, given your past, that should not be the case. We should not be guessing about where this came from. In fact, we should have had warning before it ever happened. We get a lot of people get paid to collect intelligence that should have been telling us that long in advance.
And I know you have written a lot about the bio threats, but I have to also ask, should we be looking at this in terms of also cybersecurity issues? For example, the elections just around the corner. I know there's always talk about foreign interference. Is that something that we should be prepared for?
Right. Well, I mean, we should absorb the fact that there are a whole lot of people out there in the world who wish us ill and are constantly thinking of new and creative ways to attack us. And somehow, some way, we have to get out of the mode of simply fixing a problem after the weakness has already been demonstrated, right? If that's the case, we don't need an intelligence apparatus. We should be detecting these threats before they ever strike, before they ever become real, and heading them off then. That's the whole point. That's the whole objective.
Sam, in the military world, there's constantly lessons learned. I wonder, it seems like we're always responding to the last threat, right? 9/11, and we go fix our airports. We're now looking at, China and where things come from. I just don't know that our political leaders are learning the right lessons now. And we see these weaknesses and vulnerabilities, as you pointed out. I just don't know that the political leaders are learning the right lessons because there's nothing changing in terms of our posture towards China.
Yeah, well, as you well know, again, I mean, part of the problem when you're dealing with threats is intelligence collection, and then the biggest piece often is just the policymakers. Exactly what you've said. Are you willing to take the necessary action? You don't need a crystal ball to know that the Chinese Communist Party has been out for a very long time to relegate us to second power status and become the dominant military, economic, and political force on the planet. So for the love of God, why have we then pursued the policies we have for decades to facilitate that?
Yeah, and I know you talk in your book about our dependency on China. And is that something you think lawmakers should take a look at in terms of manufacturing? We've talked about a lot of our pharmaceuticals come from there. I'd like to get your take on that. And then what if they're the first that have the vaccine?
Yeah, well, there's no question whatsoever that our dependence upon China across the board is a major issue, and everything that you've just laid out is exactly right. If you're preparing to deal with a bio threat, which theoretically we've been doing for decades, how can you ignore the fact that virtually all of our pharmaceuticals now come from China or some other place overseas? That when we went into this thing, we couldn't manufacture stuff really as simple as face masks and rubber gloves. I mean, how can you claim that you're preparing and yet ignore this? And yeah, what if the Chinese have the vaccine and we do not? Now that is a strategic situation. That is a threat to the country, just as real as aircraft carriers and planes and everything else.
Yeah. Sam, congratulations on the book. I hope people read it and understand the real concern that China poses to us right now. So I appreciate you writing it, sharing your insight with us.
Thank you, guys.
All right, guys, it's Friday. Unemployment benefits are running out. And guess what? Congress is running out as well. We're going to talk about that with our company coming up next.